Neil Oliver and the Positive Professor on the way, but time now for The Clash. And breaking tonight, 68 Just Stop Oil demonstrators have been arrested over alleged offences linked to protests outside a Warwickshire fuel terminal over the weekend. Activists glued themselves to one of the Kingsbury site tankers on Friday, staying there for about 14 hours, causing major delays to the businesses which supplies hospitals and fire stations. The eco mob have been blockading access to oil and fuel terminals all over England since Friday, as they continue to demand the government stop all new fossil fuels investments immediately. 275 arrests linked to eco-protests have been made so far. But is Just Stop Oil's demand for the government to stop using fossil fuels too extreme? Send me your thoughts to dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet @GBnews and you can vote in our poll there. I'll bring you the results very shortly. But first to debate, this is Just Stop Oil spokesperson and former oil and gas worker Neil Rothnie and director of the climate analysis group CAR26, Lois Perry. Great to have you both here. Neil, let me start with you. The NASA climate scientist James Hansen says that a rapid phase-out of fossil fuels is, on the whole, almost the equivalent of believing in the Easter Bunny and Tooth Fairy. You're not with it, are you, Neil?
Well, it made absolutely no sense to me, that statement. I have no idea who it was that said it or why he said it. It just made absolutely no sense.
Well, he's a NASA climate scientist.
We just had a report out today. We just had a report out today from the IPCC, and it's not about Easter bunnies. You know, it's a very, very grim report suggesting that if we don't start cutting back emissions now, the climate is going to be ravaged.
But Neil, we have started. What you're proposing is cutting them out altogether immediately, which means people freezing in their homes.
Absolutely.
You haven't thought this through, Neil, have you? You haven't thought this through.
Well, let's be clear. The demand from Just Stop Oil is that we stop issuing licenses, that we stop exploring the North Sea for oil and gas, and we stop developing new oil resources. If you want to talk about freezing in your home, we could go straight to the price of gas. Now, the wholesale prices of gas have gone up 4 times in the last year. There has been absolutely no increase in production costs for North Sea gas. Where did the costs come from? They come from profit-taking. They come from speculation. That's how people will freeze this winter.
Neil, I want to bring Lois Perry in to respond now. Lois?
That's absolute nonsense. And for them to say that the only thing they're doing is calling for new licenses to not be issued, it's rubbish. They're sitting there, they're blockading, they're obstructing. They don't care about normal people. They don't care about people being able to get to work. They don't care about people being able to get deliveries. They don't care about people, full stop. There's no alternatives at the moment. So even if you believe in all the IPCC stuff, you know, there's no actual alternatives at the moment that actually work. I mean, I happen not to believe in it at all, actually. But, you know, this is just absolutely anti-human stuff. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. I mean, it's quite interesting, actually, because they love insulation, insulating homes, all these people. Insulation is used making oil. I mean, where are they coming from? And what is this all about? What, you know, do they actually believe this stuff, or is it just anti-human? Is it actually, you know, just anti-capitalism? Do you know what I mean?
I completely know what you mean, but Neil, I'm trying to understand how you think
absolutely no idea what you meant.
UK should be powered.
Yeah, well, we should be fracking. You know, wind turbines need 100% constant gas.
Yeah.
So wind turbines alone can't actually help us at all.
And not yet. And maybe, Neil, they will in a few years' time once technology has moved on. But the big issue here, and I'm going to quote from Benjamin Hurd from the University of Adelaide, who has done a study reviewing the feasibility of 100% renewable electricity systems, which is what you want. And he says we would be reliant on sources like solar, wind and storage. In those circumstances, it is highly unlikely for renewables to power 100% of the electricity supply. So you are literally proposing, Neil, having no access to electricity, which is taking us back to pre-Victorian times.
Yeah.
Listen, Lucy, the producer, said that we had 10 minutes to talk about just stopping oil. Well, the first thing we're not going to talk about is fracking. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in the UK.
Yes, it is.
Forget
it is going to
it's
happen.
a red herring,
it is going to
and I'll
happen.
tell you
and
why
it's going to reduce our gas costs. And we need gas to power your beloved wind turbines, actually.
Oil and gas reserves. That's why it's a red herring. The only people who support or who talk about fracking these days are people who either are paid by the oil and gas industry or have shares
nonsense.
in it.
Well, Neil, I say frack, frack, frack. Are you accusing me of being paid by someone?
Let's frack.
The reason I'm on here tonight is because some very, very courageous, very ordinary, but very courageous people have decided that the warnings that the IPCC have been issuing, that the International Energy Association have been issuing, have gone completely unheeded. So they've gone on the streets and they've raised the alarm.
It's all complete nonsense.
On that basis,
that's why.
You've invited me here to try and explain what the thinking is, why they're doing it, and I'm going to try and do that.
Yes, but what you haven't been able to explain, Neil, is how we are going to provide electricity under your plans.
They don't want to have a debate. They just want to obstruct. So I want to obstruct him. Why should he have his view?
Why the alarm goes off. You do not do what you pair at, which is you're shouting. You might as well be looking for the plug to pull the alarm, to stop the alarm. That is not the way to deal with an emergency.
Neil, okay, you've had your say, but can I please ask you a question? How are you proposing, if we stop all fossil fuels, which is what your group wants, immediately, how are you proposing that the UK is going to be fuelled?
Yeah, tell us, Neil.
I'll try one more time. The demand is to stop licenses, new exploration, and the development of new fields.
Why are you sitting in front of lorries then? That doesn't make any sense.
About 8 years of oil and gas left, which will have to be used in the meantime while we transition to renewables. Everybody knows that.
So why are you blockading the trucks? It doesn't make any sense. Why are you sitting in front of them so ordinary people can't get oil? Why are you doing that? It doesn't make any sense. They're not courageous people. They're deluded and they want attention. And it's sad, actually, really, really sad, because they're actually hurting grannies.
Let me give Neil a chance to respond.
Sorry.
Go on.
Well, no, Neil, Lois says you're deluded. Your response?
There's not a question in that. There are only a string of invective. Look, they're there. They'll tell you why they're there. They are there to alert the people who are not listening to the IPCC and who are not listening to the IEA that there is a major crisis on. Now, they're taking action. I don't care what you call them. They're taking what I think is very, very brave action to bring this home and to get people like me onto your programme to speak to your listeners and to try and get them to look seriously at what is happening. Now,
Neil, do you have any sympathy for the fact... Neil, can I just ask you another question, please? Do you have any sympathy for the fact that we are in the worst squeeze in living standards since the days of rationing, thanks in part to the recent disruptions in global oil and gas supplies? Blockading oil refineries and cutting off the supplies of vital fuels makes that worse.
I tried 2 minutes ago to explain that there has been absolutely no production cost increase in gas. Where have the gas price cost increases come that is driving people into poverty? Where have they come from?
Can I ask Neil a question?
Question of the market.
Yes, Lois, come in.
It's a question of the markets. Where are they going to sell this gas at hugely inflated prices?
OK, well, Lois, you answer that question. Neil, let Lois answer that question, and then, Lois, you can ask Neil something.
We can control the price for our domestic consumers. But can I just ask you a question? During the medieval warm period and the Roman warm period, was it oil and gas that triggered the global warming that happened at that time? Could you just tell me why the Earth was warm in the Roman period and the medieval period, much warmer than it is now? Can you tell me if that's to do with oil and gas? Were there lots of cars on the road? Can you tell me that, Neil?
No, this is absolute nonsense. In a 10-minute discussion about stopping oil in the midst of a crisis which the International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Crisis says is absolutely critical, I'm not going to answer that nonsense. It's complete
You can't
bollocks.
answer the question because it disproves the whole theory. You won't answer the question. Tell me why it was warm in the medieval warm period. Was it because of all the engines and all the cars?
An oil worker of 40 years and two broadcasters would make a debate. You need to get serious about this. If you invite me on to talk about why people are taking action against the climate challenge, then you must really use some common sense and ask some sensible questions, and I might be able to tell you. I have 40 years experience working in the oil industry.
Neil,
ask the questions.
Neil, you personally, are you prepared to change your behaviour to link with your group strategy? Because, of course, you fly regularly and you also wear a lot of fast fashion, which is, of course, produced using fossil fuels. Are you prepared to change your lifestyle, Neil, given what you're wanting everyone else to do?
Well, look, being the one person in this programme that's got charisma and good looks, I obviously don't need fast fashion. And I obviously don't need foreign holidays to top up the tank. Do you think this is usual behaviour for a 69-year-old grandfather? No, it's not. Yes, I am absolutely and utterly committed. But this is how we're going to change the situation. We're going to fight. We're going to continue fighting the government. And they are going to eventually have to concede that they cannot continue with business as usual.
Okay.
Look,
well, look, Neil, I think you well and truly lost until the answer to that last question where you were completely right. You've got a lot of charisma. You're very good looking. Unfortunately, your views on stopping oil are completely bonkers, but please do come back. That was Just Stop Oil spokesperson Neil Rothnie and the director of Car 26, Lois Perry. So who do you agree with on this? Well, Martin on Twitter says, yes, it is too extreme. We need viable, cheap and reliable alternative energy sources in place before phasing out fossil fuels. I agree with that, actually, from DH. Extreme as in completely bonkers and basically just self-absorbed nonsense. But from John, no, it isn't too extreme because we need to get away from that evil stuff. It's responsible for much of the harm on the planet. But your verdict is now in. We've had a few close votes recently, but this one certainly isn't. 93% of you agree that Just Stop Oil's demand for the government to stop using fossil fuels is too extreme. Just 7% of you there with the very charismatic Neil. Now coming up, why are the MSM scaremongering over COVID again? This is a case for our positive Professor Carol Sikora. He'll be here shortly. But first, why have the